Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. If you're a fan of the podcast or if you hate the podcast, whatever, please hit the subscribe button just below. It doesn't cost you anything. It helps me and everybody else, so I appreciate it. Please hit that subscribe button. A lot to get to this week. I'll be doing your Q&A today, the questions you sent me on Twitter since I asked for them last night. About 12 hours to send in questions. I got some good ones. They could be about anything you want. And so I'll be answering those questions today. I'll be live with Dustin Thursday morning at 8:30, and then Sean King joins me to give me his thoughts on the Browns trade of Myles Garrett. We talked about it yesterday, and we'll talk about it again tomorrow. But for today, it's a chance to answer your questions, and shockingly, there were no questions about the Browns. There were a lot of Guardians questions, some personal questions and stuff, but not really about the Browns, which is a nice change of pace because we talk about the Browns so often. So let's get right to it. I'm going to start with I'll save Joy's tweet question for the end because that's really personal. So I'm going to save that one for the end. But let's get to the others of what people were asking, and we'll start with Z, who said, how do you feel about the future and longevity of UCSS? I feel good about it. Those of you who know, we moved from at least the first hour of the show to YouTube, from YouTube to the WKYC Plus app. Eventually, the show will be on the WKYC app. We might do more stuff on WKYC, locally on the channel. But either way, this bodes well for our future. I'm not going to get into the details too deep, but it's when you're on a channel, when you're on even an app, it's easier to attract sponsors than just being on YouTube because there's some restrictions where it comes to commercials. So. Anyway, it makes it a little trickier, and I feel better about the future now. And there's also some behind-the-scenes restructuring of kind of who ultimately is in charge of the show, and I think that's changed in a positive direction for us. You'd find the details boring, so I'm not going to get into them. But right now, I feel very good. I love what I'm doing. I love doing this podcast. I work with great people. I love doing the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. I work with great people there. I have a lot of flexibility and freedom now that I'm working independently as opposed to working for a big company at the radio station. And I couldn't be happier. And I think the guys I work with, as far as I know, all couldn't be happier either. We all love doing what we do, both here and at UCSS. And so obviously we're hopeful that these are things we could do forever. I am very happy to do this podcast and do UCSS for the rest of my career. I am not looking to do anything else. In fact, that ties into another question that somebody asked. I got to find it. Oh, yeah, from AANCN Top Row. He said, if you had to move out of Rocky River, what suburb would the next one you look to move in the Cleveland area? And it's so funny because I'm so ingrained in the town I live in now, Rocky River, even though I lived in Lakewood in my first couple of years in the area. And we loved Lakewood too, but I wasn't as ingrained because, when I was living in Lakewood, it was before we had our son Aaron, and we moved to Rocky River. He was just about to turn 2. So we hadn't really made any friends through kids or kids' activities, and now we have so many friends and so many people I know. So it's just, and I've been in, River for over 11 years now, and this August will be 15 years I'm living in Northeast Ohio. So I can't imagine moving to another suburb, let alone moving out of the area. So that ties the two together. I mean, if I had to live in another suburb, I'd probably go back to Lakewood, I guess. Maybe Westlake. There was a time I thought about moving to the east side, way earlier in my time here, but I wouldn't move to the east side. It's nothing against the east side. I'm just used to the west side. Everybody, most of my friends are on the on the west side, and it's just easier to get around on the west side, as anybody knows. Everybody knows that. So, but probably Lakewood. If I had to move somewhere else, but I can't imagine. We've really committed to the town we live in. We're very much involved. My wife's very involved in local politics, and obviously I'm very involved in local sports. And so we wouldn't, we've thanks to my guys at Perino, we've done some modernization of our home, and it's really just the way we want it now. And knock on wood, there'd be no reason to ever move. I hope I could, my son pass down this house to him. That's the goal at this point. Speaking of family, I'll get back to the question Joy started with. She was the first one to respond to my call for questions. She's asked how I'm doing with the passing of my mom, and do I have any observations to share on dealing with grief? It's a very good question, Joy, and I appreciate you asking that. Because it's something that a lot of people don't talk about. Certainly, men don't talk about, even though we all have to deal with it at one time or another. And so I really appreciate you asking the question. Dealing with the loss of my mother has obviously been tough, and people deal with grief in different ways. My sister, who, we were both very close with my mother, but my sister spoke to my mother like multiple times a day. I had a very special relationship with my mother, but so did my sister in a different kind of way. And so my sister has spent, has had a hard time getting back to work. And how she's dealing with grief, and she's finding it tough she's gone back to work, and she's finding it tough. And I have found it to be helpful to get back to a normal routine. We spent 2 weeks, my family and I, driving back and forth between Cleveland and the New York, New Jersey area to see my mom, and then for the funeral. And it was a lot. Not only the travel, the out of routine, but of course the the saying goodbye to my mother, which we were lucky to be able to do, and then her passing, and then just all the stuff that goes with it that, I and my family are involved with, that everybody's got to deal with. But everybody grieves in their own way. And for me, getting back to interacting with all of you, talking, being goofy, having fun, arguing, these things give me pleasure. And it gave my mom pleasure to see me have success, to see me reach my goals. And so when I get back to routine of doing a podcast, of being on UCSS, of coaching my son playing baseball, I know all those things would make my mother happy. And so it makes me happy to do them, and to think and thinking about positive moments. I'll sometimes listen to a voicemail my mother sent me, or watch a video or whatever. And that gives me joy. I mean, there is obviously sadness, and there will always be sadness, but I'm trying to think of the positive. I'm not thinking of her dying. I'm spending my time thinking about moments that were great. So that's how I've dealt with it. On a much lighter note, my man Eddie Evhart says, if Major League Baseball goes full realignment, what other three teams would you like to be in the Guardians division? Factor in location and division competitiveness. Yeah, I think to me, if they go 14 divisions when they expand to 32, I think the division, whatever they call it, I don't know. I think it would be the Tigers, the Guardians, the Pirates, and the Reds. It would be certainly a division where the Guardians would be competitive financially, definitely with the Reds and the Pirates. Tigers have traditionally had a higher payroll, but obviously the Guardians have competed favorably with Detroit. My guess is that would be, the division. Again, I don't know what they would call it, but Tigers, Pirates, Reds, and Guardians. And obviously, I can't even think if the Guardians drive or fly to Cincinnati. They'd probably fly. But, I mean, that's three teams that are, Cincinnati's the furthest away. And that's, 3 hour and change drive as opposed to Detroit, which is 2 and change, and Pittsburgh, which is 1 and change. So I think that would probably be the division, right? I'd have to try to think about it because there's some teams that are in weird spots. I'm trying to think, like, the East Division, you'd put New York, the two New York teams, and I guess you'd put them with Philly and Boston. But then then Toronto's kind of an outlier in a weird spot. But I guess you could put Toronto with Baltimore. But would you want to put Philly with Pittsburgh? Yeah, I don't think so. Toronto could go with Baltimore, and then you could put Toronto, Baltimore, and maybe the Chicago teams. That's a little weird. No. Baltimore, Washington, Toronto, and maybe Atlanta. I don't know. I'd have to think about the rest of it more. I really just thought about the Guardians division, but it makes it tricky if you're trying to keep it, obviously, as geographical as possible. I got 2 questions about the Guardians roster. Actually, the remainder of my questions are all about baseball here, so we'll do that. So let me just read. Oh, no. You know what? There is one more personal question, which I'll get to at the end. But Z Cleveland Sports says, what are 2 realistic, not Trout, moves that the Guardians can or will make that will meaningfully increase their chances of ending their World Series drought? And Sarah Catherine asks also, what bullpen arm can we get, or should we just call Espino and Alleman up, or both? Okay, I like both those questions because it leads me down the road of transactions. And now that we've hit June, I have started compiling my list of what I think are at least somewhat realistic targets for the Guardians. And I have a hitters list, I have a starting pitchers list, and I have a bullpen list. And since those were asked 2 questions, I'll give you my guys that I have on the list. Most of them are free agents at the end of the year, so the cost of acquisition wouldn't be that high, even though a lot of these guys are good players, and some of them could make a meaningful difference. Let's start with the hitters, because that's probably where the Guardians need it the most. So the guy I really think the Guardians should go after, now he would cost more because he's not a free agent at the end of the year, and he's in his prime, and that's Jarren Duran of the Red Sox. Now, it depends, obviously, what happens with Jarren with the Red Sox, but they've got a glut in the outfield, whether they're true contenders or not. They've got a glut in the outfield. Jarren Duran is 29 years old. I think he's a free agent in 2 years. Let me double check that. No, he's actually got 3 years left. I thought he only had 2. He's got 3 years left. So he's under team control for 3 more years. This season he's making 7.7, so the Guardians would owe him, at this point, if they traded for him now, they'd owe him about, $5 million, give or take, for this season. And he's up for arbitration, so there'd be 2 more years after this. Duran is he was an all-star in 2024, actually finished 8th in the MVP that year. Last year, not quite as good, but still an above average, more than above average, a good major league hitter. He led the league in triples. He had 70 extra base hits and 84 ribbies. He still had a pretty good year last year. This year, he's already got 10 home runs at about a third of the season, right? The OPS is down. Because he's not getting on base. He's just not getting on base the same way. You look at the last 3 years, his batting average, 295, 285, dropped to 256 last year, right now hitting 219. The on base, though, even though his batting average dropped last year, still stayed okay, but right now it's at 286. So he's not getting on base very well. He's still slugging. He's got 20 extra base hits, 33 ribbies, and 10 steals in 238 plate appearances. So that's good. But the OPS is 695, which is below average. But I expect that to go up. He can play all over the outfield, so you could play him in center, obviously. He's played a lot of center field. And ideally, a center fielder would be a good addition. But it would give you some flexibility, especially if Quan can't get on track. He had a 9 WAR in 24, almost 5 WAR last year. He's at 1 and change already this year. So it's a little below, but he's definitely been a well above average hitter for the last few years. Defensively, he's fine. He's good. He's not amazing. He's above average defensively. So that would be a target, but he would take a good cost. The cheaper options in terms of like good players that could help you offensively would be Taylor Ward, who was picked up after being with the Angels, obviously. He was picked up by the Orioles. And speaking of Angels, kind of sleeper guy that could be a very cheap cost. He's a free agent at the end of the year. He's an older player. He's 34 years old, but I like him. I like him in the clutch in the big spot. He can be a dangerous bat, and that's Jorge Soler. He's a flawed player. He doesn't get on base. His OPS is low right now, but he's got 9 home runs and 19 extra base hits in 236 trips to the plate. He's played in the playoffs. He's been, a pretty good performer. He was great with the Cubs in the postseason in 2015 and 2016. He's had other successes. He has a career 1,027 OPS in 30 postseason games, 7 homers in 30 postseason games for a guy who's not a star. And, you don't have to play him every day, depending on how other guys are performing. And the acquisition cost, my guess, would be pretty low. I mean, he's a free agent, as I said, at the end of the year. He's making a lot of money. He's got $16 million this year, but even if you got him now, you're talking $10 million. It's not crazy. So, and again, you'd have to give up very little, is my guess, to get him. Okay, that's the hitters that I've got my eye on right now. Might change as teams move in and out of contention. Let's go to the starting rotation. I've got 2 guys, both free agents at the end of the year. Both have been very good pitchers and could be difference makers, as I would say at this point, 3rd starters in the rotation, maybe even 4. Well, it depends on the guy. Now, my top choice would be Freddie Peralta. Now, you're going to have to give up a decent amount to get Freddie Peralta, even though he's a free agent. The Mets obviously traded a lot to get him before the season. They're having a terrible year. He's not having a great year for him. I mean, the guy's been an all-star pitcher twice in the last 4 years. Had a 2.70 ERA last year. He's had a 3.55 ERA. The whip is not great. The fielding independent pitching is not great, but 68 Ks in 66 innings. His walk rate is up a little bit, and the strikeout rate is down a little bit, so it's a little concerning. But at this point, he's a good 3rd starter for the Guardians behind Messick and Gavin Williams. I mean, if you had him and Bybee, and Cantillo, and Cantillo's not pitched well. He's struggling. His walks are through the roof his last 4 or 5 starts. So I thought he'd have a big year. He got off to a great start. I still think he'll right the ship, but right now he's really struggling. They may need to give him a break. I think Freddie Peralta would be a great addition. And then a little less, but even cheaper, would be Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray's missed a lot of time in 23 and 24, but last year he came back. He was healthy. He pitched well. This year he hasn't been as good. Again, the strikeout rate down and the walk rate through the roof. And I don't know that he's necessarily a difference maker at this point in his career. I mean, he's 34 years old, but the acquisition cost for Robbie Ray would be virtually nothing. You'd have to have he's on the Giants, but the Mariners are paying most of his salary. You'd have to have them or the Giants pay off a good chunk of his salary. The Guardians would not take him as is. He's making $25 million this year. But if you could get him where you're only paying him $3-4 million, which I think is realistic, because the Giants stink, then I would consider it. But he's not a difference maker at this point in his career. He's a later option, but just to get a guy who could maybe throw innings down the stretch of the season, maybe be your fourth or fifth guy in the playoffs if you needed one, he's a possibility. And finally, in the bullpen, there's three guys that are set up. Well, one of them's been a closer, but he wouldn't be a closer for the Guardians, obviously, but that I think could help. Peter Fairbanks, he's been banged up with Miami. He used to pitch for Tampa Bay. He's had a terrible season, so I think the acquisition cost would be low. I wouldn't pay much for him, but he's been a good reliever in the past, and I think he could help settling in on a better team, as more of a 6th, 7th inning guy. And two guys that have been excellent setup guys who are not having great years. One of them's not having a good year at all. Adrian Morejon from the Padres. He'd been one of the best lefty relievers in baseball last year. Not pitching great this year. And Brian Abreu has been a consistently good relief pitcher for Houston. Both these guys are free agents at the end of the year. Again, acquisition cost low. Biggest difference makers in the end, Jarren Duran and Freddie Peralta. Those guys are I think are definitely difference makers that can make a big, really raise the ceiling of the Guardians' chances of winning. There's certainly no guarantees, but that's where I'm at right now in terms of acquisitions in terms of the Guardians. And finally, the last question I wanted to give you, Sarah says, Bull, what is your bodega order? That's old school, going back to my New York days, ordering from the bodega. I mean, it was always, for me, at the bodega. A bodega is like a small grocery store for those. We have them here in the area, but they're harder to find. So not everybody, especially if you live in the suburbs, you might not know what a bodega is. But I used to get ham, salami, and cheese on Italian bread. That was my bodega go-to sandwich. Boar's Head ham, Genoa salami, American cheese. I would eat it plain. I know everybody wants their mayo, their whatever you put on these sandwiches, mustard. Not for me. Ham had to be Boar's Head, Genoa salami, American cheese. Boom. That's it. Bread, nothing. Give me. I'm all done. All right, thanks to everybody for joining me today. Thanks to Drew and Ernie for producing the show today. Really appreciate the questions. Really appreciate the support. Again, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Dustin and I live Thursday morning at 8:30 a.m. Sean King will be on the bullpen, or be in the bullpen with me Thursday evening. Until then, I'll talk to you next time. Where else but right here in the bullpen with Adam the Bull. Brought to you by Bet Rivers. See you, everybody.